Hello, hi. My name is Joey Chavez. I work at TNT as the SVP of Original Programming, and very excited to be here with you all. So let me introduce the man of the hour, Daniel Brühl. Hi, Daniel. How you doing?
I'm very well.
We're seated very close. Thank you so much for being here. I'm sure everyone, having watched that very heavy and dramatic and cathartic and beautiful hour of television, are excited to hear about how this all started. So I guess for me, my first question, especially with a room full of actors, is when did you feel like you became Chrysler? Was there a moment, whether it was in wardrobe or it was figuring out his arm, or did you have a moment where it all clicked, or did you kind of roll with it as it happened and built the character over the course of these episodes?
Well, good question. I think it was a long process. I cannot think of a key moment in which I thought, click, that's it. To begin with, which was very fortunate for me in that whole process, is that my wife is an alienist. So that was pretty handy because, and she found it very funny that I'm playing a psychologist. And so she delivered me all that precious information I needed and put me in touch with great people, psychologists, criminal psychologists in Germany. Gave me very interesting stuff to read. So I went back to read about Freud and Breuer and Jung and all the famous psychologists in Vienna. And I thought that Caleb Carr must have been inspired by some of them. There were some interesting similarities. Also, when you read the biography of Freud, similarities to the Chrysler character. And then I started to work on my own in my apartment in Berlin and started to, try out certain things, physicality and so on. But for me, it is always very important to find the right language for the character and to start talking like my character should talk, and to feel comfortable with that fundament of your voice and the right tone. And there we had a fantastic dialect coach called Rick Lipton, who was a huge help for all of us, actually, also the English-speaking actors, to go back in time and get familiar with that period sound, and especially for me, to get rid of my, as you can hear now, get rid of my Germanness and sound at least a bit more American, which is hard phonetically. It's easier for me to speak British than American, but to believe myself that although I am from Hungarian German background in the story, I have lived and studied in the US and so on. So I guess only in Budapest, I finally felt, okay, I'm ready to go. And I like that thrill when you have a huge mountain in front of you and you don't know if you will be able to climb that mountain. I actually love that feeling of also being positively scared and nervous. And that's how we felt in the first week, And we had a couple of rehearsals with Jakob, but they felt weird because we were wearing our modern clothes and the accent was still not right. And then we were playing with some props, and that was a dead body of a boy, for example. And so, it felt
they were very lifelike too. Yeah, by the way. Very creepy. When you walk early in the morning, you haven't had your coffee, and there's just
No, that was oh god, yeah. No, that was so well done, shockingly well done. And so, the moment of the truth is then the first take, the first day, and then surprisingly, it all went pretty well already the very first day. It's when I meet Dakota Fanning's character for the first time at Roosevelt's office was my and Luke's first scene. Quite an important one to start with, but that was great. And Dakota was giving us her looks, and it was so great because you could immediately feel the right chemistry between us. And that's also something that you cannot foresee when you're casted for a show. you ask yourself, will you get along for 7 months in Budapest with your colleagues, you know? And you just hope that it'll be the case. I knew Luke just a little bit, so I knew he was a great guy. Sort of. And then and Dakota Fanning, I've admired her. I mean, she's been around for such a long time, and it was weird because she felt more mature than I and Luke do, although she's half our age. And she was the boss in our triangle. She really was. And then we realized that we really like each other, that we really like to spend even our private time together, which was very fruitful and good for our work as well, because we really got to know each other pretty early on, and we got some intense conversations, private conversations, emotional conversations, right at the beginning, which created that wonderful bond we had.
Well, I think the material, you know, being so much of the pain, the trauma that you start with as a young person, and then that sort of becomes the burden of your life as you get older. And I'm curious, because everyone just watched the finale, you know, having 10 hours to have this character where it really isn't until the finale that he's able to sort of express in that beautiful scene with you and Dakota, which, you know, we've all seen these episodes, you know, who work on it so many times, and yet you get choked up every time you see that, which two people who are very vulnerable being honest about their pain. And I'm curious, just as it goes back to crafting a character over the course of 10 hours, how this experience, when you say, you know, when you go into it with nerves or excitement or a combination of both, now looking back, having that much time over the course of it to have these friendships, to build this character out, as opposed to a 2-hour movie, having 10 hours to sort of see it through. How was that experience for you, now looking back with a little distance?
Very rewarding. It was the first show I've done, so I never had the luxury of 10 hours or 7 months of spending time with a character I'm fascinated by, and that was a total luxury, because you don't feel these restrictions and this pressure that you have to get to a certain point after 10 minutes and 30 minutes, and then there's only 60 left. But you have, you know, you have that long arc. It's also an interesting question of, you know, of that time management, and in terms of what you want to show, and what you don't want to show in the first couple of episodes. So to not shoot all your powder, that's what we say in German. Does it make sense in English? So to not, you know, trying to show off too much and show too much of the character right away, but to, you know, carefully balance it, especially a character who is deeply traumatized himself and who has a lot of difficulties in showing emotions and expressing them, and then to reach the peak and the climax at the very end. And fortunately, the directors and producers were kind enough to know and clever enough to know that these very important scenes should be shot at the very end of the process, because sometimes we had to go back and forth for some moments and scenes that were not that important, and that was still a tricky thing, you know, when you're shooting episode 3 and all of a sudden they say, oh, we have to shoot something from episode 8, and you still don't know where you're gonna end up being, or the other way around. And so I remember that this very tragic scene with Dakota was shot in the last week, I think, in Budapest. So we, both of us, were already, you know, charged with all that, you know, stuff we were carrying around for months, personally, privately, but also as in our character. So it made it easy. Also the confidence that you have with the other actor. And with Dakota and me, it's something beautiful when this happens. I mean, you must know that if you can let loose, if there's no restraint, and if there is if you're embraced by the other actor, who gives you also off camera the very same energy, sometimes even more than for yourself, you know. And if that's the atmosphere on set, it's the most beautiful thing.
You mentioned, you know, the friendship that developed over the course of making this show, and one of my favorite things about the finale too is, yes, it's about crime and it's about a time and place, but it's also about these three very isolated, alienated people coming together and finding this friendship. The toast at the end that commemorates what they've done is so beautiful. I'm curious, on set, as you were talking about with these two other actors, when dealing with very dark material, how did you guys sort of keep a fun sort of experience about you? Were there sort of, on-set laughs? One of my favorite things, too, I'll just tell you guys really quickly, is we gave out to the cast a photograph from set, and there's a photo of Daniel and Luke on their phones in full period garb, and Dakota sitting there just like these guys, of course. But I'm just curious, over that much, 7 months, which is a long time, how did you keep sort of spirits up and keep it fun with you guys?
Oh, we were very good at that, I have to say. No, it was... we explored the city because none of us had spent much time in Budapest. I think Luke might have shot something there. It was the first time for me, the first time for Dakota, and also for the other actors, for the Isaacson brothers, for Brian Garrity, for so many of us. So we explored the city together, and Budapest is a very pretty and interesting, culturally very interesting place. So I tortured Luke Evans to go and see Wagner in the opera. And then I think after an hour he said that he has to go to bed because he has to learn his lines. And I say, you're lying, man. We're in the same scene tomorrow. You don't have that many lines. So when I watch these scenes in the opera, when he says, as John Moore, that he doesn't like opera that much, that was the case, at least that night with Wagner. And it was intense, I have to admit. But then we went out, we went dancing, we went to restaurants, we met at our places, most often at Luke's and Dakota's. We had wonderful conversations, and it was the melting pot that New York was and still is, was also the way we did this film, with all these great influences from so many different countries. I mean, from the US, from Europe, the directors came from everywhere. People on set, I mean, the DOP was Irish. It was a very interesting multicultural vibe, and then it wasn't only the three of us, it was actually the whole bunch who went out together. So it was Douglas and Matthew and all of us. Yeah.
One of my other favorite things about this season is that you have, in particular your character, so many great scenes with very fascinating character actors who have, their one little corner of the world that you're investigating, and you have a dominatrix at that time, which people don't even know that they, necessarily existed at that period, and you go to your old professor, and so there's so many people that you in particular, as you're investigating this killer, get to have great scenes with these actors, and I'm just curious if any of those scenes over the course of the 10 episodes in particular stuck out to you, or were particularly fun volleys back and forth?
Well, definitely the dominatrix scene, now that you're mentioning it. Even I was surprised when this scene came up, and I thought, wow, interesting to throw Laszlo Kreizler into that. And she was great.
Yeah,
fantastic. I mean, that was another privilege to get to know so many gifted, incredible actors. Many of them from England. Actors, some of them I didn't know, and I thought, God damn it! What a quality, and how high the stakes are, and that's great because you there was never the feeling of a routine. You never felt like, oh, that's easy. I know my character now after a month, and so I just gonna play it like that. But you were always encouraged to do better. Meeting those characters. Sometimes when it was shot first on them, I got really nervous. I thought oh damn, this is brilliant. I have to respond to that. Oh God, let me think for a second. If a certain scene, I mean, a guy who blew me away, a great actor from Chicago, is the one in the prison cell who goes around in circles. He's incredible actor, and I think a huge stage actor in Chicago.
Oh, you were talking about from episode 5 or 6, That was a very cool scene too. Well, and you had such great, interview sort of opportunities with these characters who you're trying to understand the mind of. But what's always fun, and what's fun about that scene in particular, is that they turn the tables on you. That's the great thing about the dominatrix scene too, is that there's a very critical moment where she puts her hand on your arm, and you feel vulnerable, which is a great sort of thing. I want to ask a little bit about the production, because I think this show in particular, was meticulous when it came to all of the department heads, from costume to really the sets we built. I mean, we in Budapest had a basically, 6-block radius of real buildings down into the ground, so people could emerge from below and all the way up. And I'm curious, as an actor, what it was like to have that level of detail and immersive surrounding to play off of for the time period.
It was mesmerizing, and it's of huge help for an actor. I've said this a couple of times, but I will say it again. I mean, I come from movies in Germany, for example. Sometimes in the past, I was sent a wonderful period script where on the page it says like there's 500 extras and 200 horses and a castle and whatever. And then you arrive on set and there's a cottage and a donkey and 3 extras. And then you're supposed to recreate the magic of the time, and it just doesn't work. So in that case, that was quite the opposite. I remember walking down Mulberry Street with Luke for the first time, and we could not believe what we saw. It was perfect. It was absolute perfection, and also the costume. So everything felt so real that it was really like time traveling. Especially the night shoots, when sometimes you didn't see the camera at all. And in these wide shots, it's a wonderful feeling if for a couple of seconds you get goosebumps, because you think like, oh man, it's really 1896, when nothing is wrong, nothing you see, nothing you hear is today, and you just see the fog, you see the horses, you see all these wonderful extras. All of the extras had handmade clothes. Made. I mean, this is also something we don't do in Germany, and it was just it blew me away.
I think we were all so proud to get 6 Emmy nominations, 1 win, and just see that this show really resonated with people with discriminating taste, but also from a wide audience. The audience really came out and loved this show, and I'm just curious, considering the success all around and that incredible pride we all have of this show, what do you think it is about it? Even though it's a period piece set many years ago, are there elements that you think are timely to today or that resonated? Like, why did it manage to really sort of reach outside of the screen and grab people?
Yeah, I guess because you're right, because it's timely, and also it's that interesting combination that got me also in the first place, of it being an extremely entertaining, interesting history lesson about New York and about real characters, fascinating characters, including Roosevelt and so many more. But also it being a dark and gripping thriller. So that combination, I guess, made it so appealing. And it's for me, it's nice to feel the response in the US, because I mean, in the past, I'd done a couple of movies that people came up to me and said, "Oh, are you the guy from Inglourious Basterds?" or
would you say no and just walk away?
They could hear it in my accent that I was.
No getting around it.
It's me. But this time with the show, it was really great. Traveling from New York and to
face all over Los Angeles.
Our pink faces all over the place. Yeah. I felt like a 12-year-old. I was taking pictures for my mom. It's not something you get every day. So yeah, it was good.
And thinking forward, we're in the early stages of another installment, another limited series based on Caleb's second book, following these characters. And I'm just curious now to the idea of going back and revisiting Chrysler. Are there things that you're looking forward to do, facets of his personality, or things that you're interested in? What are you looking forward to in this character for another season?
boy, there's lots, and that was the funny feeling we had after 10 months. We were thinking, oh, actually, we haven't told everything yet. I mean, there's so much more. And psychology, for instance, was just born a couple of years prior to the time we're dealing with in the show. So the first practice, I think, opened in Leipzig in Germany in the 1870s or something like that, or 1880s. And so that was just the beginning. So there's so much more they explore, the hypnosis, and there's so much interesting stuff that will, we will explore in the second season that I can't wait. And I'm very happy that Frank Pugliese came on board, who is a fantastic showrunner, and he has that incredible creativity. So I'm pretty sure that he will impress us with his ideas, because I still haven't read anything yet, and I cannot wait to. I mean, I read The Angel of Darkness, but not any script so far, so it's still in the making. But I guess it'll be great.
Well, I think we have a couple questions from the audience, so I'll go ahead and pull these out. One of them is, what was different for you in preparation for playing Dr. Chrysler and preparing for your previous roles? And this comes from Josh Marble.
Hey, it's always different. I guess because it was a TV show, it was so much, and it meant so much time spending with my character that the preparation was a bit more intense and longer. Yeah, in this case, I wanted to be, I always like to be well prepared. I don't want to be stuck in certain ideas that I have, because in case the director wants something completely different, then, it's difficult to, change your mindset. So you still have to be open and willing to, change. But all the info, all the background that I needed to know about, I did spend a lot of time on that. Thick books about psychology, like my wife was throwing at me. I was like, another 800 pages about Freud. And but it was interesting. I mean, delving into that time and learning so much about history at that time was pretty cool. And another great read was I Love Vice. It's a great book about New York at the time, which I think all of us read, and I think that was given to us by production or by Jakob. I don't remember, but that's a cool book.
Well, you mentioned working with all these different directors, but on one show, on one vision, which is, I'm sure, also a new aspect of working as an actor, because typically in film you have one director, one sort of person. What was it like to have these different directors come in and out? We had Jakob Verbruggen did the first 3, but after that we had people do batches of 2. Someone came in for 1. What was it like to sort of know your character, what the vision is, but also once in a while someone new would come along?
That was it was tricky, but refreshing. So whenever you felt like, especially when you hit halftime and then it's still a couple of months left and you're getting a bit tired, a bit exhausted. It's the long days, extremely hot in Budapest. So sometimes the days were really, really long, and we could feel that the energy, we're losing the energy. Then a new guy comes in, and you have to be prepared for a completely different attitude. And they were very different from where they came from their work, from their culture. I was looking forward to the Spanish guy who did 6 and 7, Paco.
He's a character.
Yeah, because I'm half Spanish, so I thought, oh, thank God the Spanish guy comes. I'm sure it's going to be fun. Short days. And eating paella and having a nice glass of Rioja. But it was just the contrary. He was so persistent, and he wanted, a lot of takes. But he was really good. He gave a lot of pace and a good energy to these 2 episodes. And the Spanish always love the gore and the creepy creepy element to it, which is funny. I don't know where that comes from. But
a little disturbing.
It's a little disturbing.
The first time we sat down with him, that's all he was talking about.
Yeah,
Like,
the corpses. See, oh, blood, more blood. And so that was, he was the right man for these two episodes.
Here's our second question from Patricia Warren. Thank you. I read Caleb Carr's book, The Alienist, in the 90s. He's such a brilliant storyteller, and his descriptions of New York were so vivid. I was delighted that the series sets were equally detailed. What was it like to work on such time-specific sets? Kudos to the production designer. I guess we talked a little bit about that, but is there anything else that you want to throw in?
Yeah, well, what was cool is I think I once read something about when they shot The Gangs of New York, that one actor, I think it was, well, probably they did it for Daniel Day-Lewis, who is so method, that, you know, no matter what you opened, if you opened a cupboard or whatever it was, or a box, there was, you could be sure that there was something in there, a period prop, and not a walkie-talkie or a bottle of plastic water. So to that level of perfection. And that was the case in our show as well. The streets they had built, there was some shops that you could actually go in, and sometimes they weren't really needed for the scene, but still you could go in and through, and and filled with props of the time. So you could really lose yourself in New York in 1896. And I remember when we flew to the first upfronts in New York, Dakota was living in one of those streets in Soho, and we were walking down the streets 2018, 17, and then flying back to Budapest 1896 to the very same streets. That was such a freaky feeling.
Bizarre.
Yeah, very bizarre.
I think the last question I'll just throw out to you, once again, with a room full of actors who are curious, I'm sure. Someone with such an incredible career and so many beautiful roles that you've done, is there any advice that you would give for actors who are out there and looking to someone like you as a real inspiration?
Well, yeah, I mean, a lot. What I only realized a couple of years ago is that, and I mean, I started when I was 15, is that for a long time I was not able to switch down the volume of all those voices around me in my head and to listen to myself, really. And it also, I mean, I was happy to find, and that's something also very crucial, to find the right people around you, and to be very careful with that, because they have a lot of control. Yeah, the agents that you're surrounded by, and also judgment that you really want to listen to among your friends, among people, among your family. But some voices are very disturbing, and you shouldn't like to please everyone. Also, great lessons were failures. So at the very beginning, I was quite lucky. I had a good kickoff in Germany with a film called Goodbye Lenin, which became an international success, and that was a dream start for me. But then I also did some films after that, when you get used to it and you're 20 and you think like, oh, that's how it is, great. And then there was some other experiences, maybe one with that donkey and the and the two extras.
Go on IMDb and try to figure out what that is.
I'm sure you're going to find something. But that was also very fruitful, to put everything again in perspective, and also in these bad experiences, there's something I learned from. So and I did choose those projects for a reason, and it's incredibly hard to make a good film. It's almost a miracle when you end up being in one, or a good show. So many things have to come together, and so many wonderful movies have been done. So to add something new to that list is it's very, very tough. And I'm a perfectionist, and sometimes that still doesn't help in my work. I mean, you must have experienced that. Dakota always called me, what did she call me? Like negativus, destructivus. She said, you're always too, you German... it's such a pain in the ass. You're always so you're so... because I still find myself sometimes being in these loops and these thoughts of, oh God, if I would have shot this scene like that, and oh no, that doesn't help. It doesn't help you. Ultimately, you just have to move on, and you have to accept the imperfection. That's just how it is. So don't be too tough on yourself, and yeah.
Well, I think you can be pretty proud of the character of Dr. Chrysler that you've put on screen. So thank you so much for doing this.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.